for the first time, they found a neuromarker for team synchrony.
Now that we're remote, part of the problem we're trying to solve is how do you help remote and hybrid teams work better together?
Welcome to the ReeThink podcast. Today we have a first time two guests with me, and we have Michael and Erwin from Syneurgy. So help yourself, introduce you to the audience. I'm stoked as hell because I think that's going to be epic today.
Hi, my name is Erwin Valencia. I'm a co-founder and co-CEO of Syneurgy. And at Syneurgy, what we do is really, we've created an AI-driven platform that understands human behavior, human connection, and looks to extract those behaviors and habits that bring people together and help teams work better together. And Michael is my co-founder, and we've been working on this. We've developed this technology over 6 years with our team.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years since we've started developing this technology. I'm a neuroscientist by training as well, and interested in AI, and some of the work that Syneurgy is doing is actually based on some of the research and we'll get into this later, on synchrony and how brains communicate. And some of that research was done by my advisor, Scott Kelso, at the Center for Complex Systems and Brain Sciences. So that really started the field back in 2007. So that's what I did my PhD in.
That's great. So thank you for the introduction. The crazy thing is how I got to know both of you is basically through a discussion that I had with Stephen Kotler, and he told me about this guy that has developed a solution that uses videos to understand how much people are in sync and how good they perform as a team. Can you walk us through what Syneurgy does and what makes it so exciting? Because the way he described it is like, no way this is actually possible.
Yeah, I'll start off. So Syneurgy, like Erwin was saying, is an AI-driven platform that uses the webcam and the microphone only to capture information about teams on their video recordings, and uses that information to predict optimal collaboration for team performance. And so we are collecting information using artificial intelligence and then nudging teams based on their information to better performance, better collaboration, better coordination. And so one of the central components, which is based on rigorous science, like I was just saying, that I did some of my research on, but that was years ago. Now it's a huge established field, which is interpersonal synchrony. And it turns out that synchrony can be measured, and it's also a predictor of optimal collaboration, better communication, coordination, and collaboration. And I'll define synchrony real quickly. So it's just basically the alignment in time and in space too of different physiological and neurobiological signals that are coming off of the human brain and body. So brain waves can get aligned, heart rates, behaviors, things like that can get aligned. And it turns out that when they do, that's a predictor of more trust among the team, psychological safety, communication, shared mental models, and so on. And so that's what we're trying to measure and predict, and intentionally nudge teams toward better communication. And Erwin, piggyback on me if you want to fill in anything that I'm missing.
Sure, I don't think you missed anything. One of the things, so when you think about when you're working with people, there's times when things click and when they don't. When they click and that things are really in sync, people tend to work better together. You've seen it, you see it across the spectrum, in kindergarten classes to professional athletics teams to Fortune 500 boardrooms. When people are not only feel like they have the skill sets to work together, but they actually enjoy working together. And maybe it's not just so much enjoyment, that's one factor, but there is actually a synchrony, as Michael was saying, in the way they think, the way they approach each other, the way they work together as a team. Now, if we think back 6 years ago when we started doing this, started working on this particular topic, the pandemic happened about 5 years ago, right? We all went from being in person to being remote. And then part of the question that we were asking ourselves was, what happens? And we've all experienced this. Everybody that's listening to this right now has experienced this exact thing. What happens when we're no longer face to face? How do we connect? How do we work well together? That's a question that we asked ourselves when we were trying to solve. So what Syneurgy is able to do now is, using AI and machine learning, we extract all these components. You know, if we were sitting in a room, we would feel sort of that vibe of like, oh yeah, we're really getting along well together. We can create, we can riff off each other, and we can do more things. You know, people are more productive. They enjoy working together. There's less absenteeism, less turnover, et cetera. So essentially what we want to do is extract those things, identify them, and then using behavior design, nudge people towards, and teams towards, doing better behaviors, or rather creating habits that bring about better outcomes.
Yeah.
And to double click really quickly on that, Rudi, like what Erwin was saying about the vibe, and we're in sync, and we have, like, in English, colloquial phrases. We have team chemistry. We're on the same wavelength. We're clicking, and so on. And there's actually some studies with that in the title. Teams on the same wavelength perform better. That's literally a study of a peer-reviewed paper. And it's all kinds of situations. Like they've done studies on remote online gamers getting in sync, performing better in those environments, psychotherapy situations, even in like coaching situations, client and coach that get in sync physiologically have more therapeutic alliance and better coaching outcomes. Pilot and co-pilot flying a plane get in sync and have shared, literally their brain waves get in sync, and they perform actions better and make fewer errors, actually. So accuracy in problem solving improves when brains get in sync as well.
So what is it about then? Because where I'm coming from is, now I imagine there must be a mechanism why we are involved as a social being in that sense, and what is the mechanism that we have that we are able to sync each other? Maybe you can walk us through how we are able to do that, because it sounds to me it's group flow, right? I have any idea why let's say individual flow exists. What is it about, like, being with other people and being at the same wavelength, being in synchrony with each other? What's it about?
Well, do you want to? So, I mean, what I'll say is about, you know, at the end of it, or at the beginning of it, it's about survival. Yeah. Right. Part of the reason that humans have become so successful is our ability to work together. And so I'll touch on a couple things. You know, there's something called the Dunbar number, which is essentially, you know, they use this in social media, sort of and really social sciences, is understanding how many people are sort of in your tribe or in your group or in your Dunbar number. It's about 150. So there's also research that has come out, and Michael can speak more deeply about this, about how the brain has sort of evolved as to manage all the different relationships and all the nuances between them. Because, and that's really where, so I'll just stop right there, but that's really, I think at the beginning of the question, why is synchrony important and why is it evolved? It's to help us survive. And I guess the other thing is sorry, Michael.
No, it's good.
In organizations, you know, if we think that the problems that we're facing in the future are going to become more complex rather than less complex, that's going to require a degree of collaboration and cooperation that we haven't seen yet, or that we still have yet to tap into on a large scale. Yeah. And that's really what Syneurgy is about, is helping people do it at distance and at scale.
That was the nail on the head right there. Yeah, exactly. We're going to require levels of collaboration. And that's why we're trying to teach and nudge teams to get intentionally, not only spontaneously, but intentionally understand your dynamics, get in sync, achieve that level of synchrony to solve those kinds of problems. And I'll piggyback on that too, in terms of mechanism. Definitely from an evolutionary perspective, synchrony is correlated with more pro-sociality, generosity, altruism,
Mm-hmm.
and just better cooperation. And then also, as I'm thinking, having this thought, we can talk about this later, but too much sync is also can be a problem. That can lead to groupthink and everybody just following one another and not enough diversity of thought and cognitive friction, which can be good. So it's really an
Mm-hmm.
optimal level of synchrony. But it, in terms of mechanism, it's a biological, the mechanism is communication and body language, and all of these other kinds of biological or biomarkers that we measure synchrony by, or whatever synchrony has to do with psychological safety, trust, and so on. Like active listening is a huge feature
Mm-hmm.
of psychological safety and trust, and that's actually measured by that core positively correlates with more team synchrony as well. So those are the mechanisms at play. And I would say also it's very interesting. Studies have recently shown that it's not just like it's the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not just individuals. When we actually get in sync and we're paying attention to the same thing and we have shared cognition and shared emotional synchrony and so on, there's a higher level, if you will, that does not exist in any one brain, but it's just a whole. It's a collective state of mind, a team
Mm-hmm.
level of consciousness that exists. And that's correlated with better performance.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds a bit like mystical in a sense, as
But,
synchrony.
but
And
manageable, measurable and manageable.
exactly, maybe you can walk me through how is it measurable on the one hand, and on the other hand, what are it sounds like you can manufacture synchrony. So what are the so maybe Michael, maybe you can tell me so how you can measure it, and maybe Erwin, you can tell me how what are the let's say the steps you can do in order to manufacture more synchrony.
Okay, so for measurement, again, there's a number of psychophysiological things. Now, let me define that. Psychophysiology. It's just things like heart rate and brain waves and um, other biomarkers. There's a whole list of them. That's like, the expertise in the field of psychophysiology and neuroscience. But and there's an overwhelming amount of studies that choose different ones and measure them. So measurement in terms of capturing that data
Mm-hmm.
and then developing models to be able to then recognize that and predict it. And so that's how we're measuring it. It's all with our platform, non-invasive. So we're only capturing data non-invasively. But it's really cool to be able to take in data because a lot of people and teams wear different wearables that everybody in performance world is familiar with, the whoops and the auras, and they capture all of this data. What can be measured can be managed. So we can do that too. And so that turns out to be the main mechanisms for measurement. And so it's really twofold about capturing the data and then developing models to be able to recognize that.
Yeah. So thanks, Michael. So from an applied standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
so back to something that Michael had mentioned about, what gets measured gets managed. Over time, well, we've evolved to really feel these and take in these different signals subperceptually, or we subcontextually. So
Yes.
you can sort of feel when somebody is paying attention. You can feel when
Yes.
somebody is into the conversation, and in a group setting, you can see when that's meshing. So what these metrics are designed to do, or extracting these metrics from, say, a context like this, what we're able to do is understand, okay, you have these things in an in-person, or when teams are in sync, this is what it looks like. When right now your team may be in a different level. So we'll make nudges along those lines. So for example, Susan Dicker did at NYU, she did an experiment where people would stare into each other's eyes for like 2 minutes. Now that's uncomfortably long, but staring into each other's eyes for 2 minutes develops a certain level of cognitive and neurobiological connection. right?
Yes.
So in person, when I'm looking you in the face, when we're sitting across from each other or around a room, when you're paying attention to somebody, that starts developing, we've evolved to really receive that signal and say, okay, these people are paying attention. It's important to them. They're engaged. And that frees up other people. That would free me up to say, okay, let me share a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
In practice, some of the foundational things that really either make or break a team are trust and psychological safety. And they're different. People think of them as the same thing, but when you think about trust and psychological safety, trust would be like if you're climbing a wall, oh, I trust you to hold the rope so I don't fall. I trust you, Rudi, that you're not going to let me fall. And when I do fall, I trust you not to make fun of me for making a mistake or belittling me or holding it against me that I made a mistake. And that's in knowledge, in any setting, really, and in a learning environment, which they're all learning environments, right, is the ability to make these mistakes, the ability to learn on the fly and know that you're supported. That's really one of the foundational elements of getting teams and people and tribes or families or societies working well together. And so it just works at a one-on-one level. And then it also works as you scale outwards, right? The behaviors would be it could be more complex when you're in a one-on-one situation and less complex so that they're more diverse on a, say, societal level. But essentially, those things that help you feel good about a relationship or working with somebody are essentially the types of things that you would do in practice. And in application, sorry, Michael, you want to?
No, I was, yeah, I'll jump in real quick. And so you mentioned behavior design.
Mm-hmm.
And then Erwin, you're an expert in behavior design, so you could speak way more about this. But I just wanted to bring it up in flesh it out in the conversation. Is so the way our platform works is it can, as Erwin was saying, it can recognize your team's individual ways of communication and getting in sync. And getting in, like teaching folks to add psychological safety or trust is you need to learn that and get better at that and then make that a habit. And that takes time and it takes teaching and and you also need to recognize to be able to do that individually for a team. The platform needs to recognize that team's dynamics, and that team's dynamics for A might be different than B's dynamics. And so we've designed a platform to be able to try and recognize that and then nudge teams in the right way for them. That's the beauty of AI, is it personalizes and quantifies your own preferences and the way that you do things. And now we're doing that for the way your team does things. And so back to the behavior design issue, and then, giving your team individual recommendations and group activities that your team can do to get you to increase your performance and collaboration and the way you communicate and so on.
I have two questions. One is, can you give me a specific example how a team dynamic that works in one particular field is totally different than another team dynamic?
Sure. So let's think about I used to work in finance. So think about, a group of Wall Street traders, and think on the other end of it, a third grade classroom or a kindergarten classroom, right? Mm-hmm. Essentially what they want to do is they have some objectives, they have some outcomes that they want to accomplish. They have some learning that needs to be done.
Yes.
In that process, they want to feel heard, they want to feel understood, et cetera, et cetera. In finance or in a trading floor, you may, the words you use, the way you say them, the aggression with which you express those things, or the calmness with which you express those things will make a difference in how that message is received. Yes. And also how it's heard. If you go into, let's just say in a kindergarten classroom, you raise your hand. If you're on a training list, you can raise your hand and take turns. But if you say, "Hi, I have a question around this," rather than actually feeling like you're in that, so each group has a norm. So you have to stick to those particular norms. Where on the other hand, if you say, if you swear in a kindergarten classroom, you're not getting this particular point. I need you to understand this. I need you to do this now. That may come up across, if a teacher or a student did that to somebody else, it may come across as something very different. Now, again, back to what Michael was saying is our platform understands, like, so you're from Germany. So in Germany, there are, versus say the United States, there may be different norms of how we approach things, where the way we lay out data, the way we ask questions.
Yes.
And the requirements of what a particular culture is looking for first or foremost may be different in another one. So for example, you may be, oh, I really like that idea, and et cetera, or versus, let me just give you the facts. This is how we do it. So what the platform does is it learns culturally what works well. So if you ask me a question, Rudi, and we're in Germany and I just go into this very long thing about how my day was or et cetera, or how I'm feeling about these things, you may be like, okay, really, that's not the question I asked you. And what our platform would recognize is that everybody on the team would be like, okay, they're going to be polite, they're going to be impatient a little bit, but we'll see if I don't pick it up, we'll see subperceptively what happens, and it'll say, Erwin, just get to the point. Which it tells me that all the time, the platform, frankly.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, that's a really good picture. Yeah, I think that drives a point home for me. There's one thing, it's a bit not directly correlated to what we just discussed, is I remember when I spoke with you, Michael, this was, I think, maybe half a year or even longer ago. And one thing, and Erwin, you mentioned it as well, is like in a group, safety and trust is very important. And I also understood, like, in group flow, safety and trust is important. However, individual flow is more of risk and embodiment. And now, like, what I came up right now is like one important thing in order to be in individual flow is that your inner critic is not active. And it's almost like in group setting is like there's no critics like from individual team member. And is that also a way how I can see it? Because I understood also there are like slightly different chemicals also involved in group flow versus like individual flow. Maybe you can walk me through that, Michael.
Yeah, well, we just actually published or submitted a paper for publication, which is going to be published in the early year, next year, 2026, January, February, on exactly this point, actually. And so, and maybe you can send a link to the viewers for the paper. Absolutely, we'll send you a link to it when it gets published. But yeah, there's a couple of things to unpack this, and then Erwin, just jump in if you. So a couple of things to unpack this is, I like what you were saying about the inner critic. So that part of the brain does shut down in the prefrontal cortex in individual flow. In collective flow, that's a little bit different, right? Because I guess that's, Erwin, what you were alluding to is you have like external critics. And you need to trust them and be safe to be heard among those external critics. So a lot of the work was done by Jeff Vandenhout in Team Flow. And Erwin, I'll let you, this is your expertise, so I'll let you piggyback off that. But we published, he's on the paper actually. So we did this study with him. And there's this idea of collective ambition and open communication. And trust and psychological safety and all of these other sort of prerequisites for that state. And then what shows up in that state versus like what shows up in individual flow. Synchrony is a huge component. It's an antecedent. It's a predictor of those states. I wouldn't say that necessarily we're going after that. We are all of these other components that we're talking about, like psychological safety, enjoyment, engagement, trust, synchrony. We're capturing those things that have to do with optimal human collaboration. And of course, that's part of the idea of collective flow or team flow or group flow. Yeah, I'll stop there.
So let me jump in there. So I just want to differentiate between this idea of group flow and team flow. So Group flow might be where we're all at a concert and we're listening to a great piece of music and we're all in the moment together and we're experiencing that together as a group, but we don't have any collective ambition other than just being in the particular place. Team flow is, as Michael is stating, is there's this condition of we've allowed and we've accepted a higher goal than what our individual goals are. So we have a higher group structure. And then from a neurobiological standpoint, Mohammed Shihada over at Caltech had identified this essentially a signal in team flow of higher beta. So we know that when we're in flow, you have high alpha, low beta. In team flow, there's this underlying signal of beta, which from my perspective, a layman's, I'm not a neuroscientist or at Caltech, but the way I think about it is we have this subtextual memory that, okay, we have a commitment that we have to make to this particular team, and that creates this sort of higher beta signal. So that is one of the signals that says, okay, everybody is sort of locked in on the same goal. That higher beta is like, I can't let myself down. I can't let my team down. People are depending on me for in service of this higher goal, this group collective ambition. So that's something that I'd point out as a key differentiator.
Yeah, I love it. Like that, and that's beta synchrony that they found. That was the first study of its kind, and very recent too, 2022. For the first time, they found a neuromarker for team synchrony. I'm sorry, team flow. In that sense, team synchrony neurobiologically, Dicker's work and all of this other work that we've published already establishes that. But yeah, this is the first time that they found a neuromarker for team flow, and I think that's exactly right. Like these different brain waves get involved in having that collective ambition and shared goal among the team members, that they're after the same thing, they're organizing their thoughts around that thing and chasing after it. And then the mechanism of communication of how they go about that's reflected in brainwaves, in shared brainwaves, as Erwin was saying.
So so one thing that I'm just trying to figure out in my head when I hear you speaking is, on the one hand, so if I understood it correctly, we have synchrony, and on the scale of synchrony, there is, like, let's say the top scale is team flow, but it's like the top % of synchrony, and synchrony is a requisite, or high synchrony is a prerequisite in order to get into team flow. Is that correct from my understanding?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
So from a performance standpoint, team flow is at the far end, is at the high end of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Every team can experience team flow, right?
Yeah.
That is that state of ultimate high team performance. What we're looking at are sort of the substrate or the essential elements that have to appear for that to happen.
Yeah.
So let's see, team flow. So on the other end of it, there's also this idea that we've recognized is, if you're familiar with heart rate variability, that is your heart's ability to increase pace, decrease pace, and the time in between your heartbeats, it indicates your sort of readiness to perform. Similarly, we've recognized this synchrony rate variability. In other words, a team's ability to get in sync. When they identify a problem, they have to get out of sync. That is, we have converging thought for execution, and then we want to diverge when we're trying to solve a problem. That is, you want as many ideas on the table. You don't want to narrow in on a solution too quickly, because you might miss an optimal solution, or the solution that gets you down from the space shuttle or from space without burning alive, for example. So a team's ability to go from high synchrony to low synchrony, that is, okay, now what we have to do is we need to start thinking divergently, and we need to come up with as many ideas and as many sort of out-of-the-box solutions as possible. A team's ability to move through that, and so there's a cycle where in execution you have high synchrony, in problem solving you have low synchrony, and every team goes through that. Your ability to move through that process seamlessly and back again in an iterative process is what makes teams successful. So again, there's this ebb and flow even within a high performing team, or that you say has high synchrony, its ability to move through those phases as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think I start in getting it in that sense. And one thing that I ask myself, because I understood now. So in team flow, so we have beta waves, we have also alpha waves, and the beta waves is there because we have this like common goal. So this means like, in that sense, like we have more, let's say, rational thought, not that much embodiment. Is that correct way of understanding, or?
Well, so that's my theory, that the beta wave is higher because of this common goal that everybody keeps in the back of their head or in the front of their head. There can be embodiment. I mean, look, team flow. Think about athletics and sports. Think about your favorite football team. Think about your favorite basketball team. Think about how all those, or your favorite Formula One pit crew, or everyone, how all those work together in synchrony, and how they, there's a big difference between a sub 3 second pit stop and a 4 second pit stop. It doesn't seem much to us, but it's a world of difference in those situations. And you've probably seen it where you have soccer teams, football teams that come together and have the greatest amount of talent, but unless they actually synchronize and they get in sync and they get on the same page and they really actually care about the team goal rather than their individual goal of being the superstar, they will not really perform to their ability. And on the other side of it, teams that have less raw talent and raw ability, if they are in sync, can outperform a team that has more raw talent, so to speak. So the embodiment, it really depends on how you're applying it. Even, David Eagleman did a study where he put a vest that translated market signals into sensory feelings on a vest. And what happened was the best traders were able to actually embody what was going on in the market and say, I feel something, there's something going on in the market. It's in my lower back by the vest, but let me make a trade in this direction. And, the best traders have that ability. We're not just like, 20 pounds of brain on top of the rest of our body, however many pounds of brain. It does take up a lot of energy, but, our entire body is essentially made to understand these feelings and understand the signals. So again, Syneurgy was designed to help reintroduce some of those signals and give you a little metric like, we're a little bit in sync. The psychological safety is low, trust is low, etc. Erwin, you're speaking too much. Let me stop.
And we actually get at that too. So there's with Erwin was mentioning heart rate variability. And so that and as everybody knows, the higher heart rate variability or trending in the higher direction is correlated with all of these better outcomes. And that's an embodied thing, right? That's in your viscera, and that's a physiological measure that tracks psychological and cognitive processes. And so like better emotional regulation, better recognition of emotions on other people's faces, more intonation in your voice and things like that, better recovery, all of these things, better mental wellness and mental health is with HRV. And like that's that study that you were mentioning, Erwin, is London stock traders who had higher interoception is the word. So interoception is the ability to sense the things that are going on inside you. So like being able to count your heartbeats and what's going on inside your mouth and your heat and your tension of your muscles and things like that. And so higher interoceptive sensitivity and accuracy, they made better decisions, actually cognitive. And that's actually what we're tracking with Syneurgy too, is like we can see that there's a trend in everybody's HRV. So I would actually say that embodiment is a huge component of what we're doing, and also of like group collective consciousness improving performance. So like you might think about it as like a group HRV that we are capturing for the first time.
Oh my God, you are touching on something that is so profound, interesting for me, because I was in touch with a family office and they wanted to figure out for themselves who are the best traders. So what they did, they took all their traders, they hooked it up to EEG devices and MRA, and they came up and they realized something similar. So I'm not sure whether this is the same biomarker, but they coined it metacognition. And it's also the perception of understanding the body signals and understanding, okay, for instance, I just made a trade. The trend is going down. Now I'm anxious because I feel my body give me the signals that I'm anxious. I tell myself a story that goes around like, okay, you made you made a bad deal. Better hedge your losses and exit right now. But with metacognition, he realized, okay, that's the story I'm making up. What's the rational thing to do is, okay, I analyzed it for 3 months. I know the stocks. It's just maybe markets moving. I wait another signal and then I make another decision. So maybe it's the same. Interception, is it? Interception? Interoception and metacognition. Maybe it's the same, just different terms. But it sounds for me, the processes for me sounds exactly the same.
Sure. And I would say also that the fear that you feel when you're losing money is similar. It's partially amygdala hijack, and you're feeling some existential risk by losing a particular trade. The best traders can be unemotional about these things, and they will also have a set definition. They will have a system in place that says, this is where I buy, this is where I sell, this is where I get stopped out. So they've already made the decision based on their analysis that this is where it's coming in. And they also know that, listen, in baseball, if you hit 4 out of every 10 balls, you're an all-star. Similarly in trading. So in trading, I think there was something along the lines of the last 20 or 30 years or even longer, 90% of the gains were made in something like 14 of the days that you were in the market. The rest of the days, so that was the bulk of the gains that you're going to see in the broader, say, S&P. So you have to be in the market on those days. And if you get stopped out on different things, it's really just about the consistency of what the system says and making decisions based on that system versus in the moment.
Okay. So what I got now is like it comes down to reading body signals, and your platform does it, and I think for the audience it's really interesting to understand how this process works, because you have just video. So you mentioned, Michael, that
video and audio
devices are not hooked up, so you have video and audio. So how are you able to get this body signals like HRV, heart rate, and all these things?
Yeah, I mean, using artificial intelligence now, there's models out there that can do that can capture. They're really advanced, state-of-the-art models that can capture some of those data points just using the webcam and the microphone. And there's a lot of like science behind it, like correlations between signals and things like that, what you can measure directly versus, and so that gets really into a lot of the tech side of things. I don't know how technical we want to get or really like deep into the science we want to get. But I will just say that there's engineering wise and science wise, there's a lot of research on this now. So it's very interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to go a little bit more in depth, but
I mean, we probably don't have the time to cover it all, but it's really interesting to see how much we progress in that regard, that we have now video, and most of the time it's not ideal in terms of resolution, but you can work out body signals with AI. That's just remarkable, and I think it's really important to note that.
Yeah, with different skin tones, and there's a lot of they're really advanced. They're really amazing. So this is on like the AI research, and then there's applied AI, right?
Yeah.
So what we're doing, one of the things that I should say we're doing, if you think about it, is translating a lot of the AI research that's going on out there and being published papers to an applied use case to solve a problem. This is much in the same way like OpenAI, right? Like attention is all you need. That paper came out in 2017,
Yeah.
and that was a research paper that came out of Google Research. And then you had a company take that research, apply it, create a use case around it to solve a problem and sell it as a product. And then started doing their own stuff and training their own models and so on. So this is very similar to what they're doing, but in a very unique way as well.
So, you'd mentioned that it seems almost magical, and I don't know if that was the word you used, Rudi, but magical, some of the things that we talk about. But, when you talk about a technology that's sufficiently advanced enough, it almost feels like magic. But to wind it back a little, you're wearing an Apple Watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your Apple Watch, the way it's able to actually read your heart rate on the Apple Watch is it uses something called PPG. And it uses, if you look at it, there's a little green light that shines on your skin and is able to see your blood flow. That is how it does it on a watch. There's a technology called RPPG, which is remote PPG, that can use the camera on your phone or on your computer that can still see the same things, because obviously computer vision can see things we can't, and it can then understand those particular levels there. So to ask about heart rate or heart rate variability, I don't think we're pulling the shade off the technology by saying, this is something that we're using.
Yeah.
And that frankly everybody uses, that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot.
You use it at the airport. When you go to the airport, you have it on your wrist. So the technology is very well vetted, very well rigorously tested, and so we've also found that works also with what we're doing and other applications.
But still, it's just I think sometimes we lose this ability to have just let's say this awe for something that works out, like, as you said, like magic. And I feel like in this age of AI, where I feel like most people think about AI just ChatGPT, like having this prompt, but coming up with something like that is for me much more like interesting and awe creating, because I think, wow, that's something where I feel like that's an application where AI is just magical. And I think this is also something that we need to show other people what is possible and what might come in the future, because there is so much more than just chatbots at the end.
100%. Well said.
I mean, so what I want to touch on that point of awe and the wonder. I mean, I remember back five, almost 6 years ago when we started doing the sort of tests around how we can synchronize people that were remote. So we've always been remote. So all four of us on the founding team are all in different parts of the world. We developed some protocols to try and improve our synchrony. And we did this in real time. And when we did that, not only were we able to increase our synchrony, but the synchrony persisted over time. And that for us was a huge unlock in that number one, it was possible. Number two, it was persistent. Number three, it was measurable, and we could repeat it. So that for us was, from a point of awe, was just one of those things that, it was awe-inspiring for us.
It was amazing. It was a milestone. I just, Erwin, as listening to you talk, you're bringing back that feeling. I was like, I remember running out of the room.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, what we just did was so incredible. Like I told my wife, she was sitting on the couch out in the living room, and I was like, you're not going to believe. It was insane. It was insane. We were different parts of the world, showing that we could get in sync physiologically in real time. Yeah. And this is before before the AI created. It was before 2020, actually, like a year before. So that was awesome. That was a great feeling. I love that.
I had a similar experience, and I think I told you about this game. You know The Mind? This game?
You told me about
Because, Erwin, have you heard about this game, The Mind?
I'm unfamiliar with it now. Please tell me.
So basically, it's simply a game of cards with numbers. So, and then the thing is, or the target is, when everybody has numbers, but you don't know who. For instance, you have like 5 cards, I have 5 cards, Michael have 5 cards, and we have all different numbers. Nobody knows who has which numbers. And the target is that we stack our numbers in the right order. So the lowest goes first. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So nobody knows, and we are not able to communicate. Also not like obvious signs of body language. So it's just getting into this like feeling of what is the right time to pull your number. So, and that's just basic. Now you start with 3 cards, and I managed with we were 4 people to get to 9 cards, meaning everybody had 9 cards, and we were able to have it in the right order. Everybody has had these 9 cards, and just achieving that was a moment of, it must be synchrony in that moment. And it was like just wow, we just managed 9 cards in a row. Everybody had 9 cards, but we managed to have it really in the right sequence. So and this is also something where I believe this is probably something that we need to bring more into teams and organization, because this is one of the rare games that everybody wins when we win as a team. It's not individual, me versus you. It's like we win when everybody wins. And that's why I really have to recommend this game to you. So
yeah, it's fantastic. So that makes me think about, so, you know, in flow and in team management, they talk about this idea of yes and in improv, where this feeling of yes, you add, everything is additive. Yes, I accept what you're saying and this. So I did my professional training at Columbia University, and one of the professors there, one of the teachers there, David Pryor, he works a lot in this area around improv. And so I'd gone in New York City to the Upright Citizens Brigade, which is a big improv group, one of the big ones here in the United States. But one of the warm-ups that you do is you get a group of 5, 9 people standing around each other, and you don't look at each other, and you basically are supposed to feel when somebody's supposed to come in and say a different number. So essentially, it helps people get connected on a sub-perceptual level, on a feeling level, to be able to know when to say, in this case, say a number. It was literally the same thing. You say a number, and when somebody steps on somebody, you start over again. So, but over time, you get this understanding of, okay, now we're all thinking the same way. And you think about the, top sports teams, special operators in the military, and surgical teams, they already think like they're one organism. And the way they do that is they do consciously try to connect. And that is at the core of it, and at very high levels, synchrony, and what our platform is.
I like Stephen, who, by the way, is on this paper that we published on Team Flow and Team Synchrony. Like in the, he's coming out with a new book with Peter Diamandis, but in their last book, The Future is Faster Than You Think, in the last few pages, they talk about the hive mind, and he talks about this as the greatest feeling on earth, even more than flow, like being in that. And what he's talking about is being in sync, right? Yeah. Being truly in sync, and then having that correlate to a specific outcome.
Yeah.
And it's just not only the felt sense of being in sync, but having that being in sync correlate with a specific outcome is really achieving a goal, an accomplishment, or the greatest feeling on earth. So we're measuring that. That's no small task.
Not at all. It's I think you're touching on something. On the one hand, like I feel the whole conversation of being in sync, it's like being connected to each other. And I think that's something so profound of the human experience, is although everybody like is his own mind and body, but we seek to be connected with each other. And it's something so profound of our human experience. That's why I believe it's probably one of the most important things in life in general, is like how we connect with other people. In particular, in this new day and age with AI coming at the forefront, but at the other hand, I really feel like it's an opportunity. It can enhance our connectiveness. For instance, in this specific example, Synergy is using AI, and it enables us to even learn, be better connected, have better performing teams. And I think it's just remarkable. And it's great that you are doing that. And you mentioned it, Michael. So you will be part of Stephen Kotler's new book, which I just pre-ordered, We as Gods. Can you tell us what we can expect, and what is the book about?
I don't want to. I don't know if I can. No, I don't even know too much about it actually. It's a continuation of the previous work. It's about the skills and mindset and framing and technology. That's where you wrote about us, needed to survive in the age of AI, in the age of abundance, and what skill sets, mindsets are needed. And then they write about a couple of, I think, 2 technologies that are facilitating that, and Synergy is one of them. And so it's exciting. It's coming out early next year, and it's going to make a big splash, and we're very excited to be part of that, and grateful, of course, that Stephen and Peter find us, the work that we're doing, important. And so it's exciting. And I will say another thing too, real quick. Last year, Erwin read a book by Charles Duhigg called Super Communicators. And I'll just make another book plug about that. And then gave that, but he's like, you got to read this book. And the first chapter is all about synchrony, and how super communicators are really good at getting in sync with other people in teams and facilitate better communication. And he just reviews all of these studies, some of Scott Kelso, my advisor's research, in there as well. So it's so exciting that you have people now are really recognizing the science, which is now like a few decades old. And writing about it in popular books. It's very exciting.
I will put this book on my order list. Maybe I have another question for Erwin. So traditional leadership tools have been self-reporting surveys and so forth. How do you imagine that Synergy will impact how leadership will be done in the future going forward?
So that's a great question, and you bring up a great point. Is that self-reporting tends to be inaccurate. People tend to, well, first of all, we are the heroes of our own story, right? So when you think about people self-reporting about their performance or their performance of their team, they tend to rank themselves a little bit higher. Everyone's a little bit taller than average, smarter than average, etc. But in reality, only about roughly 20% of teams are performing at a very high level, while almost 80 or 90% of teams are saying that they are operating at a high level. So there's a disconnect there. So what Synergy is able to do is really give a more objective look at what's going on, and not so much, really there's a Pygmalion effect that you believe you're doing well and you are going to do well. That is, you want to believe that you are doing well and doing the best to your ability. This is just a way to understand how can you make improvements. Every team has improvements to make, whether they're already at the top, the increment might be 1 or 2%. If you're an elite team or a world championship team and you're 1% better than your competition, you're going to be world champions for a very long time at that increment. So if from a leadership standpoint, what it will give you the ability to do is to understand objectively what a team needs, what you can inject into the team as far as behaviors or habits or practices are concerned. And then it gives you the ability to do it at scale and at distance. So previously or currently, you'd have to be in a room to understand, oh, how is this team doing? Oh, we need to ask everybody in the room their opinion. We need to create a safe environment. We need to create a psychologically safe environment where people are free to make mistakes because we'll get at the best ideas. That you have to be in the room typically to do, or set a culture, right? A company will set a culture that is the behavior they expect of each other and how they treat each other. But now what you can do is, let's just say you're in a large organization, you have a national team, you're at the top, and because you're leading an organization, you don't have granular information about what's going on. If you see, oh, the Northeast is underperforming the rest of the country, what is going on in the Northeast? Well, you see all the KPIs and the OKRs that an organization tracks, all that data. What you don't see is, well, how did they treat each other? How are the teams working well together? How in sync are they?
Yep.
This gives you the ability to take what used to be sort of this soft skill and say, oh, there's less psychological safety here, or there's too much stress, there's too much burnout. Why is that? The resources were down. Let's try and now a leader can say, well, why don't we try and open up the conversation about how to solve the problem? Why don't we try and reduce stress and burnout so that we get less churn? Why don't we increase resources in this way or another way? But it gives you the ability as a leader to have another data point that says, why is this team performing well, or why is this team underperforming? And then you can say, well, what are my best? And this happens all the time. You want to take, what are my best teams doing? Let me move it over into another team and try and replicate that. Yeah. But now you can see, okay, let's take this set of behaviors. How well does it actually work? Go back to the third graders and the Wall Street traders, right? How well does this transfer? And if it doesn't transfer, how can we make something similar to it transfer? And imagine you can do that now at distance and at scale, because you can see what's happening at a very subtextual, a brain, body, and behavior level on a team level of what's going on across your entire organization. And then you can see what the sort of ripple effects are. And then you can also track it in contrast to whatever KPIs you're already tracking. So you can track synergy against another KPI. So if synergy goes up and this KPI goes up, you can see how that works. Or synergy goes down, this one goes down, or vice versa, right?
I mean, then you can also say this is like the major indicator for performance, because I see that time and time again. It's, for instance, I have this example with Oracle versus Informatica. Informatica had the superior technology, nevertheless Oracle wins. So it's almost like you see that time and time again. Even in sports, it's not the best individual players, it's the best team. And I feel like going that route, for instance, with your platform, it gives your organization a competitive advantage when you are not only relying on your own, let's say, skills and all the skills of the collective to get into sync, but rather having a objective tool that helps you get into sync and manufacture it in a way that is also scalable across an organization, that not everybody is in the same office or whatever, you name it. I think that's a huge competitive advantage if applied and used correctly.
Yeah, 1,000%. So going back to the one of the first questions you asked is why Synchrony and how did it evolve? It evolved, as groups and to solve problems. And at the end of the day, that's what a team or an organization is done to do. Like if you're a sports team, your problem is how do you score more points than the other team? Or if you're Oracle or Microsoft, how do you solve these large technical problems better than your competitors? And that's what we're trying to solve for. That's what the best coaches in the world, the best leaders in the world are trying to solve for. They take disparate resources, put them together, create some alchemy, and get a better team. And often that alchemy, so something like 40% of elite team performance is due to chemistry, right? These intangibles. Well, the intangibles happen to be synchrony, right?
Yeah.
So now we're trying to understand at a granular, data-driven, trackable, measurable level, the intangibles, the chemistry. So if that's the problem you're trying to solve, and at the end of the day, it's a people problem, like everything is a people problem. If you want to try and solve those people problems, the people that understand and this resonates with will see this, and they're already in this direct. Like think about the best coaches in every discipline. Those people understand things and they share that knowledge, and they build organizations, or they coach teams, or they lead teams, and those teams will have an ingrained advantage. The sooner they pick it up, the more they it becomes habit across the entire organization, and that culture rises to the top. So to your point, why did Oracle beat Informatica? That's one of the reasons, the sort of the culture that Larry Ellison had created at Oracle and continues to create to this day is one of excellence. He's demanding, but also at the same time, he's very vulnerable about the things that in his own experience that have gotten him to the point that he was at, and so it's that leadership, it's that idea of synchrony, it's that idea of creating a culture that promotes synchrony. So again, I'll talk about this all day, but let me stop there.
No, I think
that's gold.
Yeah, it's a really good insight, and also the way you describe it. And Michael, you as well, more like from the scientific point of view, it's just remarkable. And I can listen for all of you for hours. I have one more question, and it's more the future oriented. And on the one hand, I want to have it on the macro view, and also on the other hand, like what you believe is your future with Syneurgy. So basically, looking 5 to 10 years ahead, Michael and Erwin, what do you think? What is the future of Syneurgy look like, if you can imagine it?
That is a great question. Yeah.
And it's actually, you have this experience of diving deep into the weeds to build the thing, like Michael and I are doing every single day. And then sometimes you step back. I mean, I think Michael and I, and when we started this, if we could wave a magic wand, we'd give everybody this ability to really work better together, connect more closely, to have deeper relationships, to have, it's in this idea of flow, if you have more flow, you have more joy, you have more beauty, you have more awe, that experience of not only just living life that way, but working together. So 10 years from now, look into the future, we're able to, Syneurgy is successful, we're able to distribute the technology and share this technology for underserved populations, whether they're children, whether they're educational systems, whether they're, groups of workers, nonprofits that are able to solve bigger problems, learn faster, work better together, so that the tide rises all boats. And that the problems we're solving 10, 15, 20 years from now are greater, and we're able to do it better and more easily, and with greater synchrony, more joy, more understanding, and do so better and solve bigger problems.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We want to democratize this human superpower, this ability to that's what you just made me think of, Erwin. Like to democratize this human superpower to solve great problems, and bring more of that felt sense of being in sync with others into the world, and use this technology to be able to do that would be insane. Amazing. That would be like a huge win. Right? That would be the win. And then I will also add to that, from a technological standpoint, everybody talks about AI and what world we're moving into, and so on. So I think we are heading into a world, this is like more philosophical, not practical, but we're moving into this world of artificial general intelligence, and then maybe artificial super intelligence, and creating this other thing on the planet that is as smart as us or smarter than us. And so to give that thing the ability to understand human synchrony and human dynamics so that we can coexist with it in an optimal way would be another huge win. And I think what we're doing is facilitating that direction of research.
That's great. I mean, what I really love about Syneurgy is it's really a technology that brings people together to perform at a higher level and create something which I think it's innate for all of us. It's like we want to accomplish something. And whenever you build something, I think in terms, we humans are builders, right? And it gives us joy building something and see what we have accomplished. Unfortunately, and that's like the duality of technology I see right now, is that unfortunately we have also the opposite. I can give you an example. So for instance, I'm very particular with my son of the usage of mobile phones. So he doesn't have a mobile phone. But what he tells me is basically when he's with other children, they're all on their phones, locked in. And it's dividing in a sense. And I also like to have your opinion. What do you see around this duality in technology that we have on the other hand, like great technologies, platforms just like Syneurgy that is created, that builds something and enhance the human experience, and then we have other technologies that unfortunately I almost have to say fry our brain. So what is your opinion on that? I really would like to have Michael's and Erwin's, your opinion. What do you see, and what is your opinion or your concerns, and how you navigate that?
Erwin, I'll let you go first.
Okay. That's a super thoughtful.
That's just one other podcast. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a super thoughtful question. And, something
Yes.
that dives to the center of this technology or any technology. So when you think about, I have 3 kids. Michael has a daughter. So this is something that we also think about and grapple with. And when you think, the dose, the amount determines the medicine or the poison, right? So with social media, from what I've heard, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, some of these large technologists don't allow their kids to use mobile devices, and maybe because they're closer to it. I think practically in the experience that your son is having is that it almost makes him an outcast by not having social media. So there has to be a balance there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, the dose determines the poison, and whether it's medicine or poison. And you also touch on something else, that this dividing or this joining ability of technology or anything to bring people together or drive them apart. Meta is a great company. What they've created is amazing, and they do excellent work, and they're hands down the best in the business at what they do. But part of it is that they also know that what bleeds leads, and some of the technology is designed, some of the way the technology is used by people is in a divisive nature. It's also bringing people together, because now you bring people with very rare situations, and they can come together and they can find community, and that's really great. But also you have this ability of like, there's us and them, right? So that is a dividing principle that right now sells a lot of advertising for a lot of social media companies. But what we're trying to do, and the way we see it, and the way we hope it's going to be, is we're using this technology to bring people together, right? We can understand if people are this far apart over time, we can use behavior design and nudges to sort of have them share a worldview, an Umwelt, expand their Umwelt, expand their ability to understand each other. So that's what we'd like to see. I mean, it really, listen, we can either make it a poison or a medicine. We can create awe or we can create fear. And it's really up to us in many ways. Every single person on this call, and it looks like we just lost Michael there for a second. But, we can, I think that's the key, is that what is it that we want to do? And we have to approach it with intention. Now that we're remote, part of the problem we're trying to solve is how do you help remote and hybrid teams work better together? You have to approach things with intention. So approaching social media use, approaching technology, approaching any of these things with intention, and really an eye towards, do we want this to be a divisive technology? Do we want it to be an inclusive technology? And if we can strive to make it an inclusive technology as much as possible, that'd be great.
And I will piggyback on that, saying, of course, any technology can be used for nefarious purposes, and especially something like this, because there's plenty of history to demonstrate that, some of the world's darkest times were people in sync, doing things. Greatest times too, obviously, that's what we're talking about. But also think of like National Socialism and so on, and groupthink and all of those things that we measure. There's plenty of psychology experiments like the Stanford prison experiment and all of that stuff to demonstrate this. But we've designed the technology we think in the right way, thinking about that from day one, from an ethical and moral point of view, and the guardrails and constraints, and the way we've built the architecture and way we've built the technology is to be able to, is for that purpose. And we don't use the technology to single people out or have negative ramifications on folks. We want to use it, as Erwin said, to bring people together, but we've designed the technology with that in purpose. And then how we're releasing it to the world and how it's going to be released and who's going to use it. So all of that really matters in terms of, the philosophy of the company. And we've thought about that from day one. So all of the ethical considerations and constraints and guardrails are there from a technical point of view.
That's such a great answer from both of you. And in that moment, something occurred to me is like, at the end of the day, the technology is just an amplifier of our state of consciousness. And if we come in from a, let's say, poor state of consciousness, and we want to create something, and we use it into technology, the amplification is higher in a bad way. So I believe that's why it's great to see such companies and such platforms that you have created, but because it comes clearly from a greater state of consciousness that understands like bringing people together, have them work for a common goal that is, let's say, that is worthwhile pursuing. Not a negative one is something that we should aim for. Thank you so much. I hope we can do a part 2 because I feel like there's still more to discuss. And thank you so much.
I love that.
Likewise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Really awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
You're welcome.
Thank you.